You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family,
DNA ID,
Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery,
All Things Crime,
and
Zodiac Speaking.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 33, Sabrina Kahler. In June 2002, Sabrina Mae Kahler had just turned 20 years old and was living in Erie, Pennsylvania with her mom and her live-in boyfriend, Chris Lee. Sabrina was very close with her mother, Susan Berg, who is our guest today, and her father, Richard, who also lived in Erie with his wife, Sarah. Sabrina was the youngest of the 7 blended family siblings born to Susan and Richard, who divorced in 1998. Susan describes her daughter Sabrina as developmentally delayed with the mental faculties of a 14-year-old. She had graduated from East High School in 2001 after taking special education classes, and she ended up doing well in school. Sabrina was always in regular daily contact with her parents and Chris, whom she had met on Valentine's Day and had been with ever since. He had just moved into the house with her and Susan in May, and things were good between the two of them. Sabrina was last seen the morning of Monday, June 24, 2002, outside her home. This was in the 1200 block of East 3rd Street, near Lighthouse Street. Sabrina was excited to go swimming at a lake in western Erie County that day, and she was last seen wearing a 2-piece bathing suit, blue shorts with a pink or orange top, and blue and white sneakers. A neighbor saw Sabrina get into a 1991 Chevy Blazer, plate number ELX2497, driven by a David Sherman Lee Heck, age 26, of the 9000 block of Middle Road of Lake City. David was a distant cousin of Sabrina's boyfriend Chris, and Sabrina knew him. Chris had left the house that morning to go to an appointment. He told Sabrina that he would be home around 11 a.m. Susan was also out, having left for work before Sabrina awoke. They spoke on the phone around 11 a.m. about Sabrina doing some laundry. When Chris got home after 11, Sabrina was gone, but there was a note from her that said she was going swimming with David Heck and would be home around 4. Chris later told the Times News, quote, "I didn't think anything of it. My assumption was that David and his girlfriend Ashley showed up to ask me and Sabrina if we wanted to go swimming. I wasn't home. She was probably a little upset about that, and they went without me." Chris said that the two couples had gone swimming together on several occasions in the past. But this time, Sabrina did not come home. Her parents soon became very concerned. Sabrina's father told the Times News that it was totally unlike Sabrina to be out of touch with her family. The family said that Sabrina, with the mental capacity of a young teen, was very trusting and naive. She was almost friendly to a fault and would talk to anyone, even people she did not know. Her father said that she was easy to take advantage of. Unable to find her and not having heard from her, they reported Sabrina missing on Wednesday. That day, June 26th, an official missing persons bulletin went out notifying the public and neighboring agencies that Sabrina Kahler was missing. Erie detectives began actively searching for Sabrina. Police interviewed David, but were initially only able to speak to him by phone, and he would not tell them where he was. On the phone, he told them that he was alone when he picked up Sabrina, and the two went to a convenience store and bought soda and 2 Kit Kats. Then they went swimming, and afterwards, Sabrina wanted to see the movie Lilo and Stitch. So David dropped her at West Erie Plaza Movie Theater, located at West 8th Street at Pittsburgh Avenue. He hadn't seen her since, he said. By Saturday, June 29th, Captain James Skindell of Erie's Criminal Investigation Division told the Erie Times-News, quote, "We have reason to be worried." And he said that the case was being handled as a missing person with suspicious activity. He was worried because when Sabrina left with David to go swimming, David had been wanted by police for violating parole. This is why he would only speak to detectives by phone, and his criminal record was very concerning to those who were looking for Sabrina. David had been released on parole after serving time for an indecent assault conviction involving 2 13-year-old girls in Fairview Township in September of 2000. Susan Berg says that David had stopped by her and Sabrina's home on Tuesday, the day after he went swimming with Sabrina, and she did not come home. Susan was indisposed at the time and did not speak with David, but Chris did. He reported that David told him the same thing that he had told the police, that he dropped Sabrina off at the plaza and gave her $10 to see a movie and get a bus home. But this time, David said Sabrina wanted to see the movie Panic Room, which was also playing at the plaza at the time. Sabrina's family did not believe the movie story David told them. They say it was out of character for Sabrina to go to the movies alone. She would not have chosen a thriller like Panic Room. And investigators were unable to find anyone who saw Sabrina at West Erie Plaza that day. Finally, police caught up with David Heck. At 2:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, the 29th, patrolman Paul Bizzarro and Michael Conway arrested David in the 500 block of East 10th Street. He was wanted for violating parole in an incident a week earlier, but police also wanted to interrogate him about Sabrina. Because of his record of assaulting young girls and Sabrina vanishing after last being seen with him, they were very suspicious of him. Detectives interviewed David on Saturday. They would not release any information about this session other than to say that David admitted to taking Sabrina swimming on Monday. After the interview, law enforcement personnel from the Erie Police, the FBI, the Pennsylvania State Police, the Erie County Sheriff's Department, and a New York State police dog team conducted a search of western Erie County. The searches took place over multiple days and involved a helicopter, troopers on ATVs, and search dogs. They first concentrated on an area near Manchester Road and the railroad tracks north of Route 20. But by July 3rd, media coverage reported that they had shifted to search, quote, hilly and heavily wooded terrain around the Elk Creek access area north of Route 5 in Girard Township. And now they were looking for a body. It turned out that police had gathered information from an unnamed witness that Sabrina had possibly been seen swimming with others at the Elk Creek access area on the day she was last seen. 100 police officers and volunteer firefighters scoured several hundred acres in this area over 2 days. They came up empty with no signs that Sabrina had ever been there. The Times-News reported that that same day, about 40 members of the Erie Bureau of Police, Pennsylvania State Police, and Erie County District Attorney's Office searched a 30-acre farm off Middle Road west of Fairplain Avenue in Fairview Township. This property was again the subject of a report that Sabrina had possibly been there. This was an extremely grueling search, with machetes required to chop through overgrown farmland. Later, it was revealed that the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission and a state police helicopter had also searched 50 miles of Lake Erie's shoreline, and scuba divers searched 2 ponds in Fairview Township. Corporal Mark Zaleski, the public information officer for State Police Troop E in Lawrence Park, said, quote, "This is an extensive, exhaustive search, probably one of the most intensive in Erie County for a missing person." Sabrina's case was still classified as just that, a missing persons case. But official searches for her were extensive and widespread, and continued into mid-July, covering unspecified rural areas west toward the state game lands. On July 14th, the Erie County Sheriff's Department's mounted posse and land search and rescue team spent several hours at an undisclosed location, Erie Police Chief Charles Bowers reported, but they found no signs of Sabrina. At that point in time, searches began to be scaled back. Meanwhile, Sabrina's father Richard went door to door handing out and posting over 2,000 flyers publicizing Sabrina's case. He desperately wanted to find his daughter and keep busy so he would not just sit and worry about her. David Heck remained jailed on the parole violation. He lawyered up and refused to discuss Sabrina any further, and he also refused to take a polygraph test. David's vehicle was pored over by FBI agents for 8 hours, and the home where he lived with his parents searched, but if anything was found, that information has not been released. Police continued to interview people and follow up on leads and tips, but Sabrina has never been found. Police were also briefly interested in Sabrina's 22-year-old boyfriend, Chris Lee. Per the Times News, police questioned Chris repeatedly. He also agreed to take a polygraph test. Chris said that he failed the test, but thinks that this was because he was nervous. Susan, Sabrina's mom, told the reporter that she does not feel that Chris was involved in what happened to her daughter, and police have said that they do not consider Chris to be a suspect. It seems, though, that they have not ruled out David Heck, who was an adoptive relative of Chris Lee's and grew up across the street from him in Erie. The two had reconnected just a couple of months before Sabrina went missing. Police have said they consider David a subject of the investigation. Specific information about where Sabrina was last seen came to light. According to the Times News, on Monday, June 24th, she and David had gone to a swimming area at Egley Park near Raccoon Creek Park in Springfield Township. This was a small swimming area not typically crowded and used primarily by locals. Witnesses saw Sabrina and David there. Other witnesses also reported seeing Sabrina at the nearby Tasty Twist ice cream stand on Old Lake Road sometime that afternoon. This sighting was confirmed. Another unconfirmed sighting of Sabrina and David was reported at 3:30 p.m. on June 24th, with a witness telling police he saw the two off Old Albion Road in Springfield Township. Sabrina was never seen after that. On July 18th, representatives of the Erie Bureau of Police, the Pennsylvania State Police, and the Erie County Sheriff's Department held a news conference to ask for the public's help in looking for Sabrina. Speaking to people in Erie County, PA, and Ashtabula County, Ohio, Erie Police Chief Charles Bowers said, quote, "We'd like any property owner, if they could, to walk their property to see if they see anything unusual." This was not a good sign, since it meant that searches of specific areas where Sabrina might have been had not panned out. Police now wanted people to look for Sabrina throughout western Pennsylvania and even into the neighboring state. Indeed, Bowers acknowledged, quote, "The information has kind of dwindled now." He said that law enforcement personnel had expended more than 600 man-hours in searches for Sabrina and had searched 20 different locations. This press conference was the first public acknowledgement by officials that Sabrina might no longer be alive. According to the police chief, investigators now feared that the worst had happened to Sabrina. Although her case was still classified as a missing persons investigation, there were concerns that she might possibly be deceased. Bowers said that an FBI profiler from Quantico was consulting with the local law enforcement agencies to try to make some headway on what could have happened to Sabrina. In August, there was some disturbing news. Police executed a search warrant on David Heck, who was still in prison, to take some of his blood for comparison purposes. They said they needed it to compare to some blood found in the search for Sabrina, but would not give any details about where this blood was located. But David told reporters that the police had seized a sleeping bag from his truck and it had blood on it from a recent girlfriend. Sabrina's parents hired a private investigator, Dan Barber, to assist the family in their quest to find Sabrina. They used retirement money and public donations to pay for his services. But by October, they were frustrated by the lack of leads. And so were investigators. They announced that a $5,000 reward was being offered jointly by the Erie Bureau of Police, the FBI, and Crime Stoppers. Richard would eventually double the reward, offering his own funds out of desperation to find his daughter. Meanwhile, David Heck was still not cooperating. He was busy attending to other matters, like 2 different sets of criminal charges against him. In September, he stood trial and was found guilty of burglary, conspiracy, receiving stolen property, and theft. This all related to the theft of a computer he stole from an East 23rd Street home in November of 2001. But much more significantly, the other charges David was facing had some bearing on Sabrina's case. According to the Times News, early on June 23rd, the day before Sabrina disappeared, David had an altercation with his girlfriend, Ashley Peters, and tried to run over her and 4 others with his truck at a home on Route 6 in Connaught Township. Witnesses told police that David tried to force Ashley into his vehicle, picking her up to carry her and calling her a slut. The witnesses said that when they tried to intervene, David tried to run them down. And this was evidenced by tire tracks in the lawn noted by the responding deputy. The next day, David picked Sabrina up to go swimming. He later told the Times News that after he and Sabrina had been swimming at Egley Park for about half an hour, his recent ex-girlfriend, Ashley, showed up with a group of people. David said, quote, "They came down here and started a whole bunch of stuff, so I went and called the police." He and Sabrina got into his vehicle after the confrontation with Ashley and drove to Tasty Twist Ice Cream on Old Lake Road. From there, David called the state police. A trooper met him and Sabrina there. So the last confirmed sighting of Sabrina was by a state trooper who spoke with her and David and then drove off to speak to Ashley at Egley Park. Charges against David for the June 23rd incident with Ashley included 5 counts of recklessly endangering another person, 1 count of disorderly conduct, 2 counts of harassment, 1 count of criminal mischief, and 1 count of terroristic threats. This whole situation was very convoluted and bizarre. There was allegedly a rumble at the lake with David's ex, and a state police trooper had literally been the last known person to see Sabrina, except for David Heck. But police were unable to either prove or disprove his story about dropping Sabrina at the movies, and the trail ended there. "We feel very confident with the information we found that she was not present at the movie theater," Captain James Skindell said. David, for his part, told the Times News about the Sabrina investigation, quote, "I feel like they are thinking it's me, but it's not me. They need to start looking at other people like Ashley or Chris. I feel like I got convicted of something I didn't do." He also said, quote, "I'm being set up. I'm being framed. It's getting pretty crazy. Maybe she met someone else. Maybe she was abducted. I'm just a normal guy getting all this stuff put on me." David ended up being found guilty at trial for several of the charges stemming from his attack on Ashley. He was sentenced to a year's probation. Soon, he ended up back in prison, serving 1 to 5 for writing a bad check. By Christmas 2002, the Kahler family was losing hope of finding Sabrina. Erie Police Captain Skindell told the media, quote, "We think, and everyone has led us to believe, that if she was just missing, she would have called home or made some attempt to get in touch with her family." On the first anniversary of Sabrina's vanishing, right after what would have been her 21st birthday, her father said that they feared she was dead. "We're still holding out hope, but, I can't imagine she wouldn't have gotten a hold of me by this time," he said. A little bit of biographical information about Sabrina. She was born on June 20th, 1982. She had a difficult time breathing and had to be resuscitated, which caused a lack of oxygen to the brain. This is what caused her delayed mental development. Her family said that she was kind, unjudgmental, and very friendly and warm. She went by the nickname Bree. Sabrina loved children and liked to help out at the little preschool at Wayne Park Baptist Temple, where she religiously attended church services. Her father, Richard, said that Sabrina was very godly, and during the 5 years she lived with him since he and Susan split in 1996, she read the Bible nightly. Although she had worked at McDonald's for a time, she was not working when she disappeared. She had focused on graduating high school and was proud of that accomplishment. Her mom was in the midst of finding an institute of higher education for her to attend. In 2009, Sabrina's mother petitioned the court to have her daughter declared legally deceased. She said that the decision was a very difficult one, but she hoped it might convince someone to call in a tip about where Sabrina's body might be. She also wanted some closure for herself. She told the Times News, quote, "There is a lot of mixed emotions. The not knowing is the hardest thing to take." Sabrina's brother Stephen Belfiore agreed, telling the paper, quote, "Not knowing exactly what happened is worse than actually finding that It would be easier to know that she is dead, and we could put it to rest, and we could really grieve. David Heck continued to rack up criminal charges. In 2008, he was charged with trying to defraud his insurance company. He was also convicted of burglary and sentenced to a 3-year term. He has continued to refuse to cooperate in Sabrina's case. I think David Heck has some vital information in regards to this, and he could aid us in this case. We welcome the chance to listen to him, Captain Skindell said. Sabrina's case remains open. Sabrina Kahler has dark blonde short hair and blue eyes, is 5 foot 2 inches tall, and weighs about 130 pounds. She has pierced ears and braces on her teeth. Her DNA has been entered into a national database, and her dental records are in a missing persons database. Her case is featured on numerous missing persons websites, including the Charlie Project and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children site, which features age-progressed photos of Sabrina. Mike Morford sat down to talk with Sabrina's mother, Susan Berg. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Murders, rapes, assaults, and every other heinous act people commit. How are these crimes solved? And why do people commit these evil acts? I'm Jared Bradley, the host of the podcast All Things Crime. And together with experts in every step of the investigative process, we explore how crime is solved. We launch new episodes every week. Subscribe now wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you don't miss an episode of All Things Crime.
Hi, Susan, and thank you for coming on Missing Persons today to discuss your daughter Sabrina's case with us.
Thank you, Mike. I'm glad I can help.
Yeah, and I hope we can help get the word out that this case is still unsolved and that your daughter officially remains a missing person. And she's going missing, it's over 19 years now. Next year will be the 20-year anniversary. So I can't imagine what it's like to not know where your child is all that time.
Definitely.
How tough has that been for the last 19 years of not having answers or not knowing where she is?
It's been really hard. Our whole family has been torn apart by this. I mean, it's been up and down and up and down. A lot of different things have happened with us because of the fact that she's gone and we don't know.
Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your daughter and just telling us about Sabrina and what kind of person she was?
Well, she was 20 years old when she went missing. She graduated from East High here in Erie the year before, 2 years before. And she's just a sweet kid. Very, very trusting, very naive, very loving. Maybe a little too trusting with David Heck person.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about him too. So at the time when she went missing in June of that year, what was going on in Sabrina's life? Was there anything unusual? Was everything normal? What was going on leading up to her going missing?
As far as I know, everything was pretty normal. We were trying to get her into school out in Johnstown, and we had driven out there and came back. She didn't want to stay there. She hadn't really quite decided what was going on with her life. But I still don't think that she wasn't looking. Her cousin had just gotten married. We'd gone to the wedding the year before, and she was a year older than Sabrina. But I mean, she had friends.
So nothing out of the ordinary, just...
No, nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, that's why when she did go missing, it was like, well, you have to wait 48 hours to report somebody gone. And then later we find out that it was a different time frame for the circumstance that it was, but we didn't know that it was at the time. So I remember getting yelled at by Barry Snyder, well, you should have reported it sooner. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know this person that took her off from my house.
And this is Erie County, Western Pennsylvania, right? So this is a pretty rural area with a pretty low crime rate, as far as I understand. Is that fair to say? So you didn't expect...
This is the first missing person that's really happened. I mean, we've had some murders, but, I mean, I searched all over the county, and I even had to go to, the website down in Harrisburg for their main thing, and there was only 2 other people that had the same situation where the person came up missing. And one I met as a friend down in Greenville for Sandra Baker, and I talked with her friend who had been escalating her case, but which had happened the year before. But I didn't find her for 4 or 5 years after this happened to Sabrina. So, I mean, but...
A hard thing for you to talk about, too. And after 19 years, you have to think back.
So she went missing. I had gotten up and gone to work that day and called her on my break. And, when I left the house, I said, goodbye, sleepyhead. And, I went to work, and I called her on my break and asked her to put the clothes into the dryer from the washer. And she says, okay, Mom, I love you. And then, love you too, and went back to work. Came home that night, and she never came home. We found out from the neighbors that her friend's cousin had stopped by to take them out swimming. She's a real, how should I say, water baby, or, she likes to swim. But he took them clear out to Egley Park at the point of way out in Western County on the lake by North Springfield to be swimming. And
Heck.
David Heck, yeah.
And you mentioned earlier you didn't know him at the time?
Not at the time, no. I had met him once before with his girlfriend at the house. And my friend at the time said to him, he says, I don't like that guy. But he was with this other girl, and I had no knowledge as to what was going on, So, he came by, picked him up swimming, and took him out to Egley Park, which is way out on the north of the day. And then he had a confrontation with his girlfriend from the day before, and they were at Egley Park too, and they went up to Whippy Cream it's just off of 212 up there.
So he had this confrontation the day before.
Yeah, they were out in Springboro at a party, and Ashley Peters, his girlfriend, didn't want to go with him. And he took his Bronco and was running people around with the car. And then the next day, which was Monday, he was out at Egley Park, and they were up at Egley Park too. And he went around and was trying to get a few of his other buddies to come down with him to fight these other people that were at Egley Park. And they called the state cops, and Sabrina was there. I mean, the state cops saw her. She was like defending Heck and trying to talk to them. And they, I've talked with the state policeman, but he's moved now to Lawrence Park.
So they go out to the lake.
Yeah.
This is the day after there's a confrontation out there.
Right.
And then I assume that at some point that day, your daughter doesn't come home. Did you get worried right away? Did you say, this isn't like her? Where is she? What went through your mind?
Yeah, it wasn't like her. Where is she? We called all the friends. We called all the people. And her friend Chris was trying to call everybody he knew. And, of course, David Heck was nowhere to be found. But the police did get in contact with, he showed up at the bowling alley and got his friend Dougie Heim with him. They went and took some money out of the bank and bought some booze and went partying after a while. But, I mean, for swimming, everybody at the bowling alley said that the guy smelled weird.
And when you say smelled weird, you mean smelled like alcohol or what?
I don't know, body stink, I
Okay,
guess.
just that was something they reported. Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you first get a hold of Heck, or did the police finally get a hold of him and start questioning about, we know you were with
No, he came
Sabrina.
to the house like Tuesday or Wednesday. Tuesday? He came to the house Tuesday and said where he dropped her off out at the Dipson's Plaza to see a movie after they'd been swimming. And he told me that day that he let her go to the movies by herself to see Panic Room. Well, she doesn't go to the movies by herself, for one thing. And for another thing, the last time she went to the movies, she saw the movie Spirit, which is, a G-rated movie about a horse. And not anything like a horror like Panic Room. Although they were both playing at the Dipson's Plaza that night. So I knew his thing was wrong. And yeah, I mean, there's been several other points where they've had searches through dogs and people on horses going through the western reserve lands out there. And the last I've heard was that the point they have pinpointed was Eagle's Nest. And I don't know where Eagle's Nest is, although I was talking to an elderly lady out in Girard the other day, and she was telling me she thought she knew where it was. But I don't. That's the last I've heard. And Sean Bogart's been a really good detective on this, although he even said he didn't think that the first detective, Barry Snyder, and maybe I shouldn't be saying all these names, was one to be head of the investigation originally, but Barry retired, and it was put on to Sean, and he's really into doing this now. He's reinvestigated all the people who were original in their statements, Ashley Peters and Doug Heim and a few other people he investigated. And the last thing I heard was from him that Dougie Heim said he saw Heck dragging Sabrina's body somewhere, but we can't find it. And without a body, there's no crime.
Sure. So essentially, Heck is on the radar early on, and he tells a story of dropping Sabrina off at a movie,
Right.
But the police don't really believe that story. Do you know if they did anything like check the movie employees to see if they remember her, if they checked any
it was
surveillance?
a Monday. How many people do you get there on Monday? Yeah, they checked all the people. They investigated that. Of course, now Gibson's is closed, but I mean, Heck has had other situations where he's been in jail, and we've even tried to keep him in jail to, by petitioning Albion prison and that kind of thing. Now he's got his CDL and he's out driving in Oklahoma. And to me, somebody told me that this happened to some other girl when he was like 16 out in Arizona, but I could never find out a name. So to me, it's like a multiple killer going around just taking people away.
That's an awful feeling to have to live with, the fact that you think he may have done this but can't prove it. How old was he? Was he close to your
26.
daughter's age? Oh, so he's a little bit older than your daughter at the time.
He was 2000. Yeah, it was 2002, and she was 20, and he was 26, I think, at the time. And he had already been married and had 3 kids, and she let him go, and I guess he was going with Ashley Peters for a while, and the family didn't like Ashley Peters, and they were sleeping in the car, and in the investigation, they were doing the car, and they found blood in the car, but it turned out to be Ashley Peters' blood from her menstrual cycle and from her sleeping there. But they searched his property of his house, and they found some blood in a wheelbarrow, but it turned out just to be nothing else. So...
Well, do they have, obviously he seems like the prime suspect, but without a body, it's hard to make a case against him. Do they have a possible motive? Why do they think they know what happened, or why he may have been responsible?
Well, just that he was angry at Ashley and Sabrina was available, I guess. That's the best I can figure out.
Just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe he took it out on her? Yeah.
I think she wanted to come home after the swimming, and why would he drop her off at the movies instead of coming to the house? I mean, and even if that's his situation, the cops still think he's out there in West County somewhere, around Eagles Point. That's the best that they've been able to place him.
Yeah.
So... He's gotten away with murder. He's moved to Oklahoma, and he's driving truck, and he's probably doing it again, And I can't seem to get any kind of justice out of any of it or any closure. Like, where's my daughter?
Sure.
Where's my daughter?
And even if she's dead, you'd want to have her remains, I assume, to be able to say a proper goodbye. And
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel good that the last time that I spoke with her, it was, love you, Mom, I mean, that to me feels good. I mean, that was the last thing we spoke, that the words weren't angry or anything like in some situations, but
yeah.
I don't know where she is.
And
I don't know where she is.
That's got to be an awful feeling to not know that.
Definitely.
How tough was it having her declared legally dead in 2009? Was that a tough decision for you to make?
It was. We had multiple debates between other family members, and her dad didn't want to do it, but he eventually did. Scotty was the one, her brother, to say, hey, there hasn't been any evidence of her showing up anywhere else, and maybe with this last ditch effort at that point that we didn't have a body. All we had to do was use the body of the law. That was the only body we had, was the body of the law. Yeah. And so I went and got the information and proceeded with that. Maybe as last hope to try and, if she was out there, to hear and maybe come back. I don't know.
You had mentioned some searches and stuff that were done. I mean, how extensively, over how big an area were those searches done, and did they find any kind of clues at all?
As far as I know, not. They were out mostly. I know they were out by Camp Judson on the North Springfield Road because they chased a bear out of the forest onto the campus of Camp Judson. So people were, and they were over there by Egley Park and all around that area and further into that Western Reserve, those game lands. And they kind of felt that Heck wouldn't have taken her too far because he's kind of lazy. But they searched within horses and stuff that first summer. Within, I don't know, there was tracks all along the road and so many feet into the road. But I guess the best thing I've figured out has been Eagle Point.
Yeah.
Eagle's Nest.
It seems like that's, you talk about chasing a bear out of the area, so that's what kind of area we're dealing with, a isolated and area not close to a lot of people.
Right, and he was pretty good at hunting too, so I guess he knew the area quite well.
Well, hopefully the new detective is going to stick with this case and keep fighting to find out what happened to her and provide some justice for you and your family. And I hope you get some answers and find out what happened.
They're trying to put up a billboard. We've talked to the DA about it. And with COVID and stuff, it's been kind of suspended. But they were going to try and put up a billboard between the police and the DA.
And you're coming up on 20 years, which...
Yeah, Mike. And I know I did that interview last fall with WICU, and it's just kind of thrown me back into a real... I had to start taking my medicine again.
Yeah, it's just
it threw me into a real loop.
Bringing bad memories and pain up, I assume.
Yeah, I almost wasn't thinking of doing this. I thought I'm kind of done, but I'm glad Scott had you talk with me.
Well, again, we're going to put the word out that this is still unsolved, and that hopefully people in the area, if they know anything, they'll come forward with information and
definitely
help your family out and go to the police and do the right thing.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org, which focuses on bringing attention to many missing persons cases. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up this episode, we'd like to play a preview of a true crime podcast for you called Crime Divers. Be sure to give it a listen. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Are you fascinated by true crime like us?
If so, check out our podcast, Crime Divers, hosted by me, Jill.
And me, Laura.
Look out for new episodes every Tuesday when we discuss true crime from around the world.
So what are you waiting for? Come join us as we dive in.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.